Hey, what is going on, everybody? King of Chaos, Logan Black here. Although you are viewing this on my personal page or the Year One Podcast YouTube account, this is, dude, have you heard this? It's the Roundtable Music Show where a whole bunch of friends sit around and discuss music we feel fell way under that radar. With me, as always, is none other than John Torres and Scotty Cerriti. Sound off, guys. How are we doing?
What's going on, everybody?
What up, y'all?
And joining us as the guest this week, a young, fresh-faced upstart from from the Western Massachusetts area. Big Juicy, how you doing, homegirl?
Good. How are you?
Glad to have you on here. This is gonna be a fun episode. You know, last week we had a bit of a theme. This week there was no theme. Everything was kind of all over the place. Different genres, different feels, different moods. I love to see that stuff. But let's just get right to it, as we always do. I am going to start by calling out my man, John Torres, his pick this week. Lay it on us. What did you go with, Johnny?
So I went with A New Hope from Vanna, in honor of my fellow New Englander, the Juice Meister, joining us this week. Vanna, this one comes up for a number of reasons. It's a band that I saw a whole bunch around the late 2000s. They always fell under the radar to me as just strictly like a New England centric band. This album in particular, I was probably the most of when I saw them was when they were like doing the tour supporting this album. I saw them twice in that span. But probably one of my favorite, just like my steering wheel in my car has taken so much abuse as a result of this album. Between how it, like the first 3 tracks alone, I just feel so sorry for my steering wheel. This is one that I just think like Vanna had been around for a little while and they had always been on the heavier side of things, and this was their like foray into like, let's add some more clean vocals into this. And I thought they killed it. I thought they found it, but then they went back to doing heavier stuff, so I guess it wasn't to their liking, but I sure loved it.
I was gonna say, from Let's Have an Earthquake into Hell's Mouth We March. For me, when an album starts off with just like, oh yes, let's go. It's one of the reasons I can't stand a lot of records that will start off with like a moody track. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but like Cradle of Filth, who I'm a huge fan of, always like their opening track is always some guy who's trying to sound like the devil. Oh, and unto him, it's like shut up and just fucking play a blast beat. This, it was just like, money, let's go. And I love that. But let me lay it on you guys what the rest of y'all think. Juicy, what's on your mind about Vanna?
So, I mean, when Johnny dropped this in the group, I was like, oh, man, it was such a throwback because, okay, I'm way younger than, like, most of you.
Thanks for reminding us.
Okay, yeah, no, that sounds really, really bad. But, like, realistically, when this album came out, it was 2009. I was a sophomore in high school. And, I know. It sounds terrible. I know. You guys can, like, hate me and bash me on the side after, I promise. But I just remember this coming out and, like, you know, I was, like, kind of following the music pathways of, like, my peers in high school. And they're like, oh, you have to check out this album. And I was like, okay. And I turned it on. I was like, this is pretty legit. And then I actually got to see Vanna at, I don't remember what year Warped Tour it was. But I just, like, it kind of, like, came full circle. So, like, this album actually was, like, when I started to appreciate and get into Vanna.
I was going to say, this, to me, having never heard, I mean, I've heard the name, never heard of the band, like, any songs. This, to me, is the quintessential Warped Tour sound.
Yep, 100%.
Specifically, I would say, and if you're saying, Johnny, that this is when they tried some clean vocals and, like, it sounds a little bit spacey at times, which I think is something that, like, a lot of bands are trying for now. This to me sounds exactly like when I go to Warped Tour and I'm like walking to go get myself a burger or like going to check out the merch tents. This is what I hear surrounding me by like 10 different bands. Scotty, lay it on us. What did you think, man?
I really, really like this. I'd never heard Vanna before, but once Let's Have an Earthquake transitioned into Hell's Mouth We March, I was completely sold on the record. I sat here for the 42 minutes and just didn't move the entire time and just took it all in. Trash Mouth is my favorite song on this album, and Vanna is going into the regular rotation for sure. For sure.
Yeah, dude, this was I always get put over the records that of bands I'd heard of and never really took the time to listen to. And again, when I feel forced to listen to something in a good way, it's not a bad way. When I feel forced to listen to something, it's fun for me. So that's what I thought about this one. Like I had mentioned, I think a lot of bands are trying for kind of that spacey sound and mixing it with like other instruments, and they did that pretty damn well on this record. Again, I have nothing to compare it to in terms of any of their other stuff, but there are a ton of bands right now that I think are adding in a guy with a Mac, or somebody with a Mac on stage to be able to kind of play some loops and some sounds and just like fatten the sound up, and you could certainly hear that here. And I'm sure this band sounds very, very similar without this. I did, considering we're talking about Warped Tour, I saved some Vanna live stuff from the Warped Tour YouTube account into my videos to watch later, so I'm going to make sure to check that out and see what they're like live. Anything else you guys would like to add? Any questions, comments, concerns, or feelings?
Fun little fact, just because Scotty mentioned Trash Mouth. During that release tour, the amount of like just bodies you'd see get launched into the air as like when that song would hit, like that's the song, that's the body bag song, man. That's
warms my heart.
Oh God.
You love to hear stuff like that. That is, I really genuinely think that, and this is a bit off topic in general, but considering I'm sure all of us have been to a Warped Tour at some point in our lifetimes, that culture of the big giant outdoor festival where there's security but there's not really security, bodies are going up in the air, 115-pound kids are getting dropped on their heads from stage diving and crowd surfing. Those days are done. We're never getting those back because of lawsuits and because those tours aren't necessarily profitable anymore. However, for me, I will always have fond memories of that stuff. And again, like we'll be old people and telling the youngsters, oh, I remember when you used to get launched and that one person lost a shoe and the person would have their hand up with the shoe. Anyone lose it? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's transition to the next album choice. I'm gonna go with Scotty. Scotty, let us know what you chose and why.
So I picked Rogue Taxidermy by Days and Days, who are a folk punk but also ska band. Very attached to the New York like crust punk scene. Very attached to bands like Leftover Crack and things of that nature. I found this band through a playlist on Spotify called The Sounds of Folk Punk. And the song I heard specifically was Misanthropic Drunken Loner. And it was the first time that I had only heard like one song by an artist. And I immediately went to Spotify and I was like, all right, well, what's their top 5? Threw them all in a playlist and I was like, all right, let's see what this is all about. And I've been a big fan of the band ever since. They're super good live. Their studio recordings are a little more full because they'll add things here and there. And this is probably their best record. They keep trying to outdo it, but it just they haven't hit it yet.
So I wore the Rancid shirt for a reason today, and it's because I always bring up like jokingly that I'm a music hipster and just a snob in general. And the reason being is that the only way I got into Rancid was years after high school. I was like, I think post-college too, because everybody in high school that I did not like wore Rancid shirts, and I'm like, that band sucks now. The same with Days and Days. The amount of people that I saw talking this band up and wearing shirts or like, oh, we're gonna all this stuff. I was like, you know what? I don't like that person. I hate this band. And similar to you, Scotty, I saw them on a YouTube playlist of just like music videos, and it was for post-party depression. And I was like, I'm in. This is my band now. When you mentioned this, big smile on my face. Absolutely love this record. But I want to open up to the rest of you guys. Juicy, what were your thoughts?
So I had heard of Days and Days because someone had showed me, like you said, post-party depression. But once I got into the actual album that Scotty suggested for the week, the only thing I could think of was like A Voyage of Angry Pirates.
Yes.
Yes.
Think of. I don't know why. Like I make weird associations with music sometimes, and that's like the first thing I thought of. But like I was about it. Like if that was the soundtrack to some pirate voyage I was on, I'd be down.
Hell yeah.
The pirate. It's funny. It could be a pirate voyage, and it's interesting that you think that because literally, if one of these are the people in this band, which by the way, I'm in love with everyone in this band. Like, just they are beautiful human beings, and I'm sure nobody would agree because they all look like they haven't bathed in years. However, if they put an eye patch on, 100% pirate. They take it off, and they are train hobos, which is actually closer to what the band is.
Yeah.
Johnny, what did you think of this one?
Lot of songs went into the regular playlist as a result of this. I had hadn't heard of the band at all before going into it. Yeah, Muddy Knees, Blue Jays, Dry Gaunts are all becoming regular plays. Generally, the realm of like folk punk and anything like it is like pretty unfamiliar territory for me. I mean, outside of like if it's something in like firmly in the ska category, then it's on my radar. But if it's folk punk, like it's kind of hit or miss in terms of if I've heard of it. So all of this has been a pretty cool revelation when this stuff comes up.
Yeah, man, it's they definitely have an interesting sound, especially within like the whole folk punk genre, because when I think folk punk, I think of just people, just a guitar. Certainly, again, the whole back to no bathing thing. That's what I think of when I think of folk punk. And these guys bringing in, the I don't know the washer, the scratchy washer thing, and especially that trumpet. Man, I don't know anyone's names, but the young lady who plays the trumpet, she's a very soulful player, which is a weird thing to say for punk rock, but just like, man, she hits those notes exactly how they need to be hit for those songs. And the mix of the male and female vocals totally do it for me when it comes to this band. A lot of if you mentioned the playlist, a lot of this has ended up on my gym playlist. Some of the faster ones and the more thrashy tunes, so to speak. Any other questions, comments, concerns, or thoughts? Or feelings? I usually go with feelings, don't I?
I just thought this was really cool because until Scott's suggestion this week or even your suggestion this week, I had never really listened to any like folk punk like stuff. So it definitely turned me on to like a whole new genre that like I never really knew existed and or thought I would gravitate towards. So it's pretty cool.
And I think that's what the cool thing about this show is that a lot of, I'd say at least 75% of the bands or albums or anything that's been like suggested here have all been things that I never would have taken a listen to at any point, and then boom, now I've got to check this out, and it's awesome. I do want to say, the guy who, it's not a bass, but it's supposed to be a bass, he pretty much plays a string.
Yes.
To get some low end in there. It's an interesting thing, and I think it's. I don't. This is not me insulting the band at all. And Scott, if you've ever seen them live, you could attest to this because I have not. So you could maybe clue me in on how it goes. I cannot imagine you getting a lot of sound out of that.
Not really.
Right. So it's pretty much the show.
Right. It also comes across on the album too because there are moments where like it's supposed to be that really really deep low end, and you'll hear it then. But when it starts getting into like trying to get those higher notes, that's when it starts kind of just blending in with all the other strings on the recording.
Right, and I think for me, like, if you strip punk rock down to like its most basic, of course you've got the idea of like substance over what is it, a passion before fashion, as H2O likes to say. But like, I'm not gonna complain about a band that is supposed to look like train hobos. They sound like train hobos, and you know what? Fuck it. They've got the guy playing one string. I'm all for it. I think it really adds to everything, despite not adding as much to the sound overall.
Like literally, anytime I hear like folk anything, like follow that up with whatever genre comes after, folk punk, folk metal, there's always going to be some sort of hearkening to yesteryear. There's going to be some sort of classic sound, whether it's horns, whether it's bagpipes, whether it's somebody playing a washer or a washboard or something like that. Like, that's what I can count on whenever I hear like folk, even if it's as simple as just an acoustic guitar. Like, there's going to be something that's a little like rooted in classic about it.
Right, and I think it takes it like an extra mile, because if you look at, folk artists, they don't necessarily have to jump back to the washers, because I feel like we've evolved past that since the 20s. But you know what? When someone's hearkening back to that, they're looking to create a completely different image with their sound, and I think that's pretty cool. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the band The Goddamn Gallows. Not Gallows, The Goddamn Gallows. They're very similar type deal, where they've got the guy with the washer, they've got a guitar player, and they've got a banjo player. Getting that, country folk sound in with the punk rock. And I think they also do a fantastic job of that. Found out about them through Days and Days. Anything else, guys? Cool. Let's move it along. Juicy, you sat there and you talked about, in 2009, I was a sophomore, but you picked the oldest record out of anybody here. So,
I did.
Arguably the most punk as well.
Certainly, I would give you credit on that. Lay it on us. What was your pick and why?
So this week I picked Wild in the Streets by the Circle Jerks. Yep, it's definitely the oldest. It's from 82. And I mean, no reason other than like, it just like, as soon as you asked me, it was like, oh, let me think. And it was just the first album that came into my mind. I've been listening to it a lot lately. I actually just recently found it within the past couple months. And like really started getting into the Circle Jerks. But it just like was rolled off the tongue. I was like, yep, that's it. Light bulb. No further search.
So it's funny that I feel like with the whole genre of the show, where it's like, we're gonna pick albums that flew under the radar, and then the Circle Jerks, like, legitimately their logo is like, you could be no idea, you could not know how to spell the word punk, but the Circle Jerks logo. It's like Black Flag or the Misfits. It transcends the genre. However, the band itself and their songs, outside of like Wild in the Streets and maybe like one or two others, really hasn't like stepped outside of the underground. Keith Morris, of course, is a godfather of the genre, but at the same time, like, if you ask people like, hey, what's your favorite Circle Jerk song, they might I don't know, what's that one on Tony Hawk, that one, sure,
right.
So I think this is a great choice of a band that still, despite being somewhat successful and having somewhat of a name, still did fly under the radar. But let me throw it to the rest of you guys. Scotty, what do you feel on this one?
I love this record. I've loved this record since I found it in high school, when a friend gave me a mix CD and it had like 50 songs on it, and of course this entire album front to back was on it. It's a really good album for the current climate of everything. It's fast, it's angry, it's aggressive, and it makes its point without overstaying its welcome. It's a quick listen, but it's also like, if they put more into it, it would have been overblown. I love this fucking album.
I was gonna say, and again, we're going full circle here, where I buried Cradle of Filth earlier for having those opening tracks of just like chants. This is 26 minutes of just in your face. That's what is to me stands out amongst this, and especially like that era of hardcore, hardcore punk is just, we're cutting all the fat off everything. You are getting the leanest cut of meat possible, but it's a delicious cut of meat. Johnny, lay it on us, man. What did you think?
Yeah, Circle Jerks is always a name I had just heard in passing when it comes to like the roots of punk rock and stuff like that. Like, just reading through Wikipedia, it'll be like they'll get thrown in like a large hodgepodge of names. Yeah, it was pretty much exactly as you described. It's like it's stripped away in your face. There's no frills here. Literally like that scene in Dewey Cox where they do punk rock. That's just probably what they patterned it after. Was probably after the Circle Jerks. Faster, angrier.
It just sounds like some kind of punk. How do we always end up referencing Dewey Cox on this show?
I don't know, but I'm gonna watch it again tonight. So that's
yeah. You know what? I'm gonna after this. I think I might just turn it on and think about chopping my brother in half. Question authority, moral majority, and I gotta put some love on. Put a little love in your heart, because in 5th grade, we did this music recital at our school. We had a lady come in and teach us how to sing a bunch of songs, and then we performed the songs, and at this giant assembly with different schools all coming together that this lady all worked with. And put a little of the original version, not the Circle Jerks version, of Put a Little Love in Your Heart. So this was the one song, despite I knew some of the stuff on here, but I was able to sing along with that one. And I'll tell you what, man, that and there's another. I don't know what album it's on. I don't think it's actually on Spotify, but they do a cover of. They did put their own twist on it, but it's "I Want to Destroy You," and it's got now I'm blanking on her name. She was an '80s pop star, and it was not Debbie Gibson. So Debbie Gibson does backing vocals on the Circle Jerks' "I Want to Destroy You." Yeah, if you look it up on YouTube again, this is me being the monster music nerd that I am. There's a music video for it, and I think there's an MTV News. When MTV had news, an MTV News tidbit, I believe, with Kurt Loder talking about Debbie Gibson getting on stage in L.A. with Keith and the Circle Jerks and doing this song. And there's Debbie Gibson, dressed like a teen pop star doing stage dives. It's fucking dope.
That sounds amazing.
Oh, you guys got to check this out. It's definitely on YouTube because that's where I saw it. Any other questions, comments, concerns, or feelings about this album?
Do you guys know the little tidbit of like the little cameo of who you can find on the album cover?
No. Who would that be?
Mike Ness from Social Distortion.
Oh, in '82. This is probably before he went to jail too.
Yep.
I was gonna say I'd love to put Mike Ness's solo stuff on here because I think it's brilliant work. But I don't feel like that fell under the radar because Social D is so like Mike and Social D are like transcending music. Because goddamn, brilliant guy. But yeah, that's a pretty dope little musical tidbit. I will put that in the little space that I have left in my brain, and using that one. All right, let's move it along to my choice this week. I chose the Bridge City Sinners' "Here's to the Devil." This band kind of falls under the folk punk genre, although I've never heard them describe themselves as that. I've heard their lead singer, whose name escapes me.
Libby Lux.
Do you see this? Do you see I'm doing the J-O-B to a rookie, guys. Greenhorn's taking it. So yeah, she's described the band as gypsy jazz, which I think is a lot better of a sound because I immediately upon hearing them I got a lot more Go-Go Bordello than I did Days and Days or like other folk punk bands. But this to me, this is their second record, their second full-length record, and is such an improvement from their first one. I enjoy the first record, but it's not really a serious record. They're kind of just trying to have fun. They have a song all about pussy, which is right. It's all just sexual innuendo. So it's like, okay, I get it. But then this one, they're like a lot more serious, and they're put a lot more effort into the songwriting and crafting. And again, gypsy jazz, I think, is the best way to put it together. There's a fiddle, there's a mandolin, there's a steel guitar, and Sweet Christmas Can She Sing. What a soulful voice. Like that, I think, is what hooked me on this, is just, holy moly, that young lady can sing. But let's open this up to everybody else. Johnny, what did you think about this one?
Yeah, you when you mentioned the fiddle and the mandolin, I'm like, those are two big cheap pops for me, man. Is you give me a fiddle and a mandolin, I'm like, all right, you've got me for at least another 15 minutes minimum on this now. And yeah, this was really, really cool, still folky, but like different folky. Creature is one of the coolest things I'd ever heard, and that just opened up the album. Wild way to get things going. Witch's Wrath and Song of the Siren also definitely went into like the regular plays. Yeah, a lot of just like really interesting voice, and yeah, she can sing until she's hoarse. That like powerhouse.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I always really enjoyed about the record, because I've listened to it probably 3 dozen times since I discovered it a couple months back. One of the things that I really love is the fact that the first, I'd say, half or so is very much like when you're thinking like, oh, this could definitely has the punk influence, and then boom, we go to like some Bayou, kind of backwoodsy kind of sound. You got the kid with the squinty eyes playing the banjo in Deliverance, and that's what the second half of that record is very much just like a very walky country backwoods type sound. And it's different from the first half, which is just bam, bam, bam. If you had drums in it, it'd be like all over the place. Scotty, what did you think about this one?
The first time I heard this band was when they played St. James Infirmary, and I kind of overlooked this album at that time. But listening to it now, this is probably my favorite of their releases as a whole. I very much get some of those like weird mid '80s Tom Waits New Orleans funeral procession on fire type of thing from it. And I really like Witch's Wrath, which actually went into my playlist for everyday listening.
That's a banger, man. Witch's Wrath is certainly such a banger. Juicy, lay it on us. What did you think about this record?
So it's funny that like you mentioned that like Libby Lux describes the band as like gypsy jazz, because I was describing the band to Cody earlier today, and I was like, it's like this like evil gypsy caravan like taking over, like it just, that's exactly what I described it. I was just like, what do you mean? I played Witch's Wrath, of course, the one song that everyone's been talking about.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. But yeah, just I definitely added it to my playlist, and I'm gonna be like looking more into their stuff, because I love the grit in her voice, and I love it.
I think for me, this is the definition of kind of what I wanted with this show, because I feel like if this band had come out with this sound, let's say in like between 92 and 95, when music and bands were being played on the radio, and like it was a different time where like bands were appreciated, like at this point. And it's understandable because music changes, tastes change, and people are making creating different sounds. A band like this could never sell records nowadays. They could never tour and work big arenas. But I feel like had that album come out then, it definitely would have been on 120 minutes. These guys definitely would have played an unplugged. I feel like the success would have been there, and I feel like they feel that way for a lot of stuff that I listen to at this point. I certainly feel like a lot of the more band centric, you know what I mean, the more instrument centric bands certainly could have found success in a different era. Considering that at this point, again, it's somebody with a Mac and that's it. You're good.
Yeah.
But with that said, any other questions, comments, concerns, or feelings about this here record? Cool. Let's move it on to the song of the week. Or sorry, not song of the week. Question of the week. I've taken that much. It's the question of the week is about a song. So
it is.
Let's do this. What is your favorite love song? I am going to start with Scotty Cerriti.
Oh, Scott's going to talk about Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds again. Into My Arms by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, the opening track from The Boatman's Call in 1997. I know it's a super cheesy, super like pop record, but it was one of the first non-narrative songs I had ever heard him perform. And to open a love song with "I don't believe in an interventionist God, but I know that you do" is kind of like powerful to me. It like, especially for someone who was in the throes of a heroin addiction. So
Certainly. God damn. You've made me a fan of Nick Cave, so I could. He was another one of those guys. People I didn't like in high school loved Nick Cave, or no, it wasn't that. It was literally that people were smart that listened to Nick Cave, and I always felt stupid. So I was like, oh, I'm not smart enough to listen to Nick Cave.
oh, you are, trust me.
Oh, it's now. Listen, at this point, I've gotten so much brain damage. Anything that I've learned is now gone. But I enjoyed everything that I listened to when you did pick them. Johnny, what is your choice?
That would be Monkey Knife Fight by Minus the Bear. It's what a name. Leave it to Minus the Bear to come up with a song title like that. But it's just like a summer listening song. Like the whole chorus is "Let's drive around the lake a little too fast." You know, her eyes on the wine, her hand on my shoulder. Like that's like summer romance encapsulated in one song. But like you can make a whole playlist out of songs like that. Like this was a rough choice, man, because like you could put that in a whole playlist with like City and Color songs and stuff like that, or Alkaline Trio songs for just like summer romance jams. Like, but Monkey Knife Fight would be track number 1.
Yeah, man. This is a really hard question because there really are like, man, like love. Like, when you think like love songs, like holy moly, there's a lot in there. But I'm gonna have to check that song out simply based on its name.
Yeah.
Juicy, what is your pick for favorite love song?
So can I just preface this with like when you dropped that in the group, I was like, what? I was like, he wants me to think about my favorite love song.
Absolutely.
So first of all, the biggest curveball that I could have ever probably been thrown by you, like I was not expecting that. And then it made me think like this could go in a million different directions. Because I don't know, there's so many genres of love songs to pick from. But I had to narrow it down to 2, and like the first one is really, really cheesy, and like I was probably like, I don't even know how old, if I was even born when it came out. But I'm gonna go with More Than Words by Extreme, and I know that's like the cliche, like whatever, but like I love that song for whatever reason.
So
it
good.
just like it hits me in the feel so hard. But then tied for very close second with that is Clavicle by Alkaline Trio.
Ooh.
That was my number 2.
That's a banger. That is a banger.
Very 2 extreme ends of the spectrum there, but I couldn't just pick one.
No, I'll tell you what, More Than Words surprised me. Like it was like, all right, and like I think about it, it's like, oh yeah, that is a beautiful tune. Gary Sharon is a singer of or am I thinking someone different?
No, I think that's right.
No,
that sounds right.
Yeah, and he left to join Van Halen and suck a big one on that.
We don't talk about that.
No, listen, we got Van Halen, got Van Hagar, but nobody talks about Van Sharon.
No, reason for that.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent. Both of those are an excellent choice. Goddamn, Alkaline Trio. I'll tell you what. And this is I guess a transition into what my pick is. But up on my list of love songs is "This Could Be Love" by Alkaline Trio. Despite the fact that it is certainly a very morbid love song, but my choice is an incredibly morbid song. In high school and college, because of the people that I believe that I was dating and the mood that I was in, and I was very dark and brooding, I was convinced this would be the wedding song that my future wife and I would dance to. When I did end up having a wedding, that was not the case, because I decided to marry somebody who is not a raving lunatic like I am. My choice for favorite love song is The Smiths' "There's a Light That Never Goes Out." It is a love song. It is a very strong love song. It is deep and strong and emotional, but it is morbid, morbid, morbid. If a double-decker bus crashes into us to die by your side, it's such a heavenly way to die. Yeah, could you imagine in-laws taking a listen to that as it happens? Yeah, I went with a different tune this time around. But yes, I think I love the fact that everybody has very different takes on their favorite love song, and I think that is indicative of a much larger thing in that love matters and is so much different to all of us, which I feel is a beautiful thing, and that will make me smile for the rest of today. With that said, that's going to bring this show to a conclusion. Before we get out of here, where can we find everyone on social media? Scotty, start it off for us.
Twitter and Instagram at SCCeriti.
Johnny.
Twitter and Instagram at TheConceptJT.
Juicy.
You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and you will find me under It's Big Juicy with 3 Y's.
3 Y's, because it's extra juicy.
I mean that, but just, 1 Y was taken, so I hit it 3 times.
Hell yeah. I support that. And for me, guys, you know the deal. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, King of Chaos NYC. And if you're watching this, you're watching it from the YouTube account of the Year One Wrestling Podcast. So what you should probably do, besides thumbs upping the video, besides leaving a positive comment, besides subscribing to the content on that channel, hot dang, why don't you go to the Year One Wrestling Podcast on any podcasting platform and hit subscribe, listen, enjoy, leave a 5-star review, a thumbs up, whatever it takes. Keep it going for us, guys. Thank you for joining us. For everybody here, I'm Logan Black saying we'll check you out next time.